A black female chief faces a brutal attack in court. Her badge, a defiant shield. Will justice triumph over hate? Hit like and video, subscribe, and ring the bell for our latest videos. Don't miss this epic tale of courage. The Virginia courtroom was a powder keg, the air thick with tension as a drug bust trial teetered on the edge of chaos. The gallery's whispers and reporters scribbling, drowned by the sharp crack of a gavel that failed to quell the storm. Lieutenant Aisha Coleman, a 25-year-old black oversight officer, stood at the room's edge, her presence a quiet force, her badge hidden, her eyes locked on Officer Mark Brennan, a white cop whose smug testimony filled the stand with venom. Brennan, his voice booming, spun a tale of the defendant's arrest, painting the man as a kingpin. His account glossing over details Aisha knew didn't add up omitted injuries. Hints of excessive force buried in his swagger. She stepped forward, her boots echoing on the polished floor, her voice a blade slicing through the room's buzz. Your Honor, I request clarification on Officer Brennan's testimony regarding the use of force, she said, addressing Judge Harold Grayson, her tone calm but unrelenting. A challenge that froze the gallery. Pens stopped, eyes snapped to her, the air tightening like a coiled spring. Brennan's head whipped around, his face twisting with contempt, his blue eyes blazing. Who the hell are you to interrupt, he snarled, his voice a lash, ignoring Grayson's gavel pounding the bench. You got no right, sweetheart. The slur detonated, gasps rippling through the room, the gallery recoiling as if struck. Aisha's gaze didn't waver, her calm a fortress against his rage. Your report omits a documented wrist injury to the defendant, suggesting excessive force. She continued, her voice steady, cutting deeper. I recommend reviewing the body cam footage. The gallery buzzed, reporters scrambling, but Brennan's control shattered. You're nobody, he roared, his finger stabbing the air, his face a mask of fury. Grayson's voice thundered. Officer Brennan, stand down, but Brennan was a wildfire, his ego scorched by a challenge he couldn't stomach. He lunged from the stand, his boots slamming the floor, his fist raised, charging Aisha with a snarl that echoed like a war cry. Spectators screamed, reporters surged, but Aisha sidestepped with lethal precision, his swing grazing her shoulder, a faint bruise blooming beneath her jacket. The bailiff dove, tackling Brennan, pinning him to the floor as he thrashed, spitting curses. You're nothing, he bellowed on, his voice raw, his defiance choking on its own venom. The courtroom erupted shouts, gavels pounding, chaos swallowing order. Aisha stood tall, her breath even, her face unyielding as she brushed her sleeve, untouched by the assault's weight. The bailiff cuffed Brennan, his screams fading under the clamor, but every eye was on Aisha. She reached into her jacket, her movement slow, deliberate, and drew a gleaming badge. Holding it high, the room fell silent. The air sucked out as the badge's inscription caught the light. Chief of Police, City of Richmond. A collective gasp shattered the hush, followed by a stunned stillness. Grayson's glasses slipped, his jaw parting in disbelief. The defense attorney's pen clattered, her eyes wide. Reporters scrambled, cameras flashing as the truth landed like a thunderbolt. Aisha Coleman, at 25, was Richmond's youngest police chief, appointed in secret days ago to shield her from backlash. Brennan, pinned to the ground, stared up, his face draining of color, his rage collapsing into shock. Aisha's voice cut through the pandemonium, addressing Grayson, her tone unshaken. Your Honor, I request Officer Brennan's immediate suspension pending investigation for assault and conduct unbecoming. Grayson, still reeling, nodded, his voice hoarse. Granted, court is in recess. The gavel fell, but the chaos surged, reporters shouting questions, spectators murmuring in awe, a cluster of veterans in the back rising to salute Aisha, their faces alight with pride. Aisha stood firm, her badge glinting, her eyes sweeping the room, a silent vow that she would not be broken. Brennan was dragged out, his curses swallowed by the uproar. But the weight of his actions and Aisha's response hung heavy, a spark igniting a firestorm. Outside, news vans screeched to a halt. The story of a black female chief attacked in court spreading like wildfire. Hashtags like Chief Coleman trending within minutes. The courtroom cleared, but the energy crackled, a moment that would reshape a city's soul. Aisha stepped towards the judge's bench, her shoulder aching, but her resolve a steel core. Knowing this clash was only the first battle in her war for justice. The gallery's whispers followed her, a mix of shock and reverence, as reporters spilled out to break the news. Their headlines already forming a chief who'd turned an assault into a declaration of power. A woman who'd stood unbowed against hate. The veteran's salutes lingered in her mind, a quiet affirmation, as she prepared for the storm ahead. Her badge a shield, her will a weapon, ready to face whatever came next in a city, watching her every move. The Virginia courtroom's doors slammed shut behind the chaos, but the echoes of Aisha Coleman's stand reverberated far beyond its walls, a shockwave that rippled through Richmond's streets and lit up screens across the nation. Officer Mark Brennan's attack on Aisha, followed by her stunning reveal as the city's new police chief, had ignited a firestorm, with news vans clogging the courthouse block and hashtag Chief Coleman trending globally within hours. Inside the courthouse, Aisha stood in a quiet hallway, her shoulder throbbing from Brennan's grazing blow, her badge now pinned openly to her jacket, its gleam a defiant answer to the assault. Reporters swarmed outside, their shouts muffled through the walls, while Judge Harold Grayson's voice still rang in her ears, granting Brennan's suspension and ordering an investigation into both the assault and Aisha's allegations of excessive force. The weight of the moment pressed against her, but Aisha's resolve was unbreakable, her mind already racing toward the battles ahead. She slipped into a side office, where her deputy, Captain Lena Morris, a seasoned black officer who'd mentored her, waited with a tablet streaming live coverage. "You've got the world watching, Chief," Lena said, her voice steady but proud. Aisha nodded, her expression calm but her eyes burning with purpose, knowing the city's divided soul would test her like never before. Outside, the public reaction was a fractured mirror. Some hailed Aisha as a hero, a black woman who'd faced down hate and won, while others, stoked by online forums and talk radio, questioned her authority, whispering she was too young, too inexperienced, or worse, a diversity hire unfit to lead. Social media buzzed with clips of the courtroom clash, Brennan's snarl juxtaposed against Aisha's unflinching badge reveal, amassing millions of views. A local activist, Jamal Carter, live-streamed from the courthouse steps, his voice raw. "This is our chief, standing tall against a system that tried to break her," he said, his words rallying thousands to share hashtag Justice for Aisha. But across town, in a dive bar where off-duty cops gathered, a few grumbled over beers, their loyalty to Brennan fueled by resentment of Aisha's rapid rise. Inside her office, Aisha sat alone, the tablet now silent, her mind drifting to the path that brought her here. At 18, she'd entered the police academy, driven by a childhood memory of her father, a transit worker, humiliated by a racist cop. She'd excelled top of her class, promoted to lieutenant by 23, and now, after a clandestine selection process, appointed chief to reform a department plagued by scandals. The secrecy had been the mayor's idea, a shield against backlash, but Brennan's attack had blown that plan apart. Aisha's fingers traced the bruise on her shoulder, a reminder of the pause, but her heart steadied as she recalled her oath to protect, to serve, to change. A knock broke her thoughts, Lena, with news. The city's Internal Affairs Division had launched an investigation into Brennan, pulling his service record, which hinted at prior complaints of excessive force, mostly dismissed. Judge Grayson had also ordered a review of the drug bust case, citing Aisha's concerns about Brennan's testimony. "They're taking you seriously," Lena said, but her tone carried a warning. Some in the department won't. Aisha nodded, knowing the old guard veteran cops like Brennan would resist her reforms. She stood, her badge catching the light, ready to face the storm. Outside, the courthouse steps had become a battleground of ideals. Jamal's rally grew, drawing hundreds Black families, student activists, and veterans who chanted Aisha's name. Their signs reading Chief Coleman leads across the street. A smaller group, mostly white and waving thin blue line flags, shouted that Brennan was railroaded, their anger stoked by a local radio host who called Aisha's appointment woke nonsense. Tensions flared as the groups clashed, police separating them before fists flew. Lena's tablet pinged with a breaking news alert. CNN had obtained the courtroom footage, showing Brennan's attack in stark detail. Aisha's sidestep and badge reveal, now iconic. The segment ended with a pundit's question, can a 25-year-old chief unify a divided city? Aisha didn't need to hear the answer, she'd prove it herself. Back in the courthouse, Grayson summoned Aisha to his chambers, his face grim but respectful. Chief Coleman, your allegations have opened a can of worms, he said, gesturing to a file on Brennan's history. I'm ordering a full audit of his arrests. But you've made enemies today. Aisha met his gaze, her voice firm. I didn't come to make friends. Your Honor, I came to do what's right. Grayson nodded, a flicker of admiration in his eyes, and dismissed her. As Aisha left, her phone buzzed a text from her mother, a retired nurse. With a single line, you're stronger than they know. The words anchored her, a shield against the growing storm. By evening, the mayor issued a statement supporting Aisha, calling her a visionary leader. But whispers of political pressure swirled, some council members wary of her youth. Aisha ignored the noise, meeting with Lena to plan her first moves as chief, a press conference to address the attack, a review of department protocols, and a push for body cam transparency. Outside, Jamal's rally swelled, a choir singing hymns of justice, their voices carrying into the night. Aisha stepped to the courthouse window, watching the crowd, her bruise a dull ache, her badge a heavy crown. The aftermath was just beginning, and she was ready to lead no matter the cost. The Richmond courthouse, its steps still scarred from the dueling protests of the previous day, stood as a reluctant sentinel over a city teetering on the edge of reckoning, its air thick with the promise of truth and the threat of division. Inside, Aisha Coleman, the 25-year-old Black police chief whose badge reveal had shaken the nation, sat in a stark office, her eyes scanning a stack of internal affairs reports that peeled back the layers of Officer Mark Brennan's career like a wound. The investigation into Brennan's courtroom assault on her and his alleged excessive force in the drug bust case had taken on a life of its own, unearthing a trail of complaints that painted a picture of a cop unchecked by the system. Aisha's deputy, Captain Lena Morris, stood by her side, her tablet glowing with Brennan's file, 6 excessive force complaints over a decade, 3 involving Black suspects, all dismissed for insufficient evidence despite consistent patterns. Aisha's jaw tightened, her shoulders still sore from Brennan's attack, but her mind was a steel trap, focused on the task ahead. This isn't just about him, she said, her voice low but resolute. It's about a department that let him slide. Lena nodded, her expression grim, knowing the fight to reform a force steeped in old habits would test Aisha's mettle. The internal affairs team, led by a no-nonsense investigator named Detective Carla Reyes, had pulled Brennan's body cam footage from the drug bust, revealing a suspect's wrist bruised under overly tight cuffs, a detail Brennan had omitted in court. Reyes, a Latina with a reputation for fairness, met Aisha to share the findings, her voice steady but urgent. We've got enough to recommend charges against Brennan, assault on you, plus falsifying reports, she said. But his buddies in the precinct are circling the wagons. Aisha's eyes narrowed, expecting resistance but undeterred, her resolve forged in years of overcoming skepticism in the academy and beyond. Outside, the investigation's ripples stirred Richmond's soul. Jamal Carter, The activist whose live stream had galvanized thousands organized a community forum at a local church, drawing hundreds Black families, Latino organizers, and white allies who shared stories of police overreach, their voices a chorus of pain and hope. Chief Coleman's our chance for change, Jamal said, his words live-streamed, sparking #reform with Aisha to trend alongside Chief Coleman. The forum's energy reached Aisha through a text from her mother. They believe in you. Keep going. The message steadied her, a reminder of why she'd taken the badge. Meanwhile, Lena uncovered Aisha's own record, a shield against the skeptics valedictorian of her academy class, a master's in criminal justice by 22, and a string of commendations for de-escalating volatile arrests. The mayor's office, under pressure, released a redacted version of Aisha's resume to the press, quelling some critics but fueling others, with a local talk show host sneering that her fast track reeked of politics. Aisha ignored the noise, focusing on the case. Reyes's team dug deeper, finding a 2018 incident where Brennan had roughed up a Black teenager, the complaint buried by a supervisor now retired. Aisha ordered the file reopened, her voice firm. No more cover-ups, she told Reyes, knowing each step forward would provoke pushback. The investigation wasn't just about Brennan, it was a mirror held up to a department riddled with blind spots. Outside, the community's support grew. A group of Black clergy, led by Reverend Thomas Hayes, held a prayer vigil for Aisha, their hymns echoing through Richmond streets, while a Latino youth group painted a mural of her badge near the courthouse, its colors bold against the brick, but the old guard fought back. A leaked memo, traced to a precinct captain loyal to Brennan, accused Aisha of overstepping her authority, circulated among officers, and picked up by a conservative blog, stoking claims she was anti-cop. Aisha faced the backlash head-on, holding a closed-door meeting with precinct leaders, her voice calm but cutting. I'm here to protect this city, not tear it down, she said. Stand with me, or step aside. Some nodded, others glared, but her authority was undeniable. The investigation took a pivotal turn when Reyes uncovered a witness, a bodega owner near the drug bust, who'd seen Brennan slam the suspect against a wall without provocation. His testimony, recorded on video, was a bombshell, corroborating the body cam evidence and strengthening the case for criminal charges. Aisha met with the city attorney, a cautious man named Paul Whitaker, to discuss prosecuting Brennan. This could spark a fire, Whitaker warned, citing tensions in the force. Aisha's response was steel. Then let it burn clean. By evening, CNN aired a segment on the investigation, featuring the bodega owner's testimony and Aisha's academy record, framing her as a reformer facing a corrupt system. The report drew thousands to Jamal's forum, their signs now reading "Trust in Aisha," but the precinct's resistance simmered, with anonymous threats slipping into Aisha's inbox, their words laced with racial slurs. Lana urged her to increase security, but Aisha refused to flinch, her badge a talisman against fear. She visited the mural, touching its painted badge, her heart swelling at the community's faith. The investigation was peeling back layers of rot, but it was also building a foundation for change, with Aisha at its center, her resolve a beacon in a city ready to rise or fall with her. Richmond's streets pulsed with a restless energy. The city split like a fault line as Aisha Coleman's stand against Officer Mark Brennan and her rise as police chief became a lightning rod for a nation grappling with its soul. The investigation into Brennan's assault and his history of excessive force had cracked open a wound, and the public's reaction was a storm of conviction and fury. With #Chief Coleman and Justice for Aisha trending alongside vitriolic hashtags like #Back Brennan, each post a battle cry in a war of ideals. Aisha sat in her office at police headquarters, the faint ache in her shoulder a reminder of Brennan's attack. Her desk buried under reports and letters, some praising her courage, others laced with slurs and threats. Her deputy, Captain Lena Morris, stood by, scrolling through a tablet that glowed with news alerts. CNN had aired the bodega owner's testimony, framing Brennan's actions as part of a pattern, while a conservative outlet ran a hit piece calling Aisha a radical upstart unfit to lead. "They're drawing lines in the sand," Lena said, her voice steady but heavy. Aisha's eyes, sharp with resolve, met hers. "Let them. We'll hold the truth." Outside, the city was a canvas of division. On one side, Jamal Carter's community forum had grown into a movement, with thousands gathering at a downtown park, their signs reading "Aisha leads and end police abuse." Black families, Latino activists, and white progressives stood shoulder to shoulder, sharing stories of injustice, their voices amplified by a megaphone. Reverend Thomas Hayes, a black pastor, spoke to the crowd, his words of fire. "Chief Coleman is our David against Goliath," he said, sparking cheers that echoed through the streets. The mural of Aisha's badge, painted by Latino youth, had become a pilgrimage site, adorned with flowers and candles, a symbol of hope. But across town, a counter-protest swelled outside the police union hall, led by a group of off-duty cops and their supporters, mostly white, waving thin blue line flags and chanting, "Support our own," a local radio host, Mike Vance, fanned the flames, calling Aisha's appointment a woke experiment and Brennan a scapegoat for politics. The crowd, numbering in the hundreds, clutched signs reading "Cops aren't criminals," their anger fueled by a narrative that painted Aisha as an outsider, tearing down tradition. Tensions boiled over when the two groups met near City Hall, shouts turning to shoves, police in riot gear forming a line to keep them apart. Aisha watched the clash on a live feed, her heart sinking but her will unyielding, knowing every step toward reform would come at a cost. Inside headquarters, the investigation pressed forward. Detective Carla Reyes, leading internal affairs, delivered a bombshell: a second witness, a nurse who treated the drug bust suspect's wrist injury, confirmed Brennan's excessive force, her medical report contradicting his testimony. Aisha ordered the evidence sent to the city attorney, Paul Whitaker, who was preparing criminal charges against Brennan for assault and falsification. But Whitaker warned of pushback. "The union's rallying behind Brennan," he said. "They're calling for a no-confidence vote against you." Aisha's response was ice. "Let them vote. I'm not here to be liked." She called a press conference, her first as chief, to address the city. Standing before a sea of cameras, her badge gleaming, she spoke with a clarity that cut through the noise. "I became chief to serve every citizen, not to protect a broken system," she said, her voice steady. "Officer Brennan will face justice, and so will anyone who abuses their power." The speech, broadcast live, drew millions, with #AishaSpeaks trending as supporters shared clips, but it also galvanized her critics, with Vance's radio show accusing her of declaring war on cops. The divide deepened as Aisha prepared for a public hearing on Brennan's case, set to review the investigation's findings. Lena's team uncovered more dirt, a 2016 incident where Brennan had intimidated a black shopkeeper. The complaint ignored by a now-retired captain, Aisha met with Jamal and Reverend Hayes, seeking their input on community policing reforms, their trust a lifeline amid the backlash. "You're not alone," Hayes told her, his hand on her shoulder. "We're with you." The community's support was tangible donations poured into a fund for police accountability, started by the Latino youth group, and a black-owned bakery sent Aisha a cake with Chief Strong iced on it, a small gesture that steadied her. But the threats grew darker, with an anonymous letter slipped under her office door, its words scrawled in red, "Step down or pay." Aisha handed it to Lena, her voice calm. "They're scared. That means we're getting somewhere." By evening, the hearing loomed, and Aisha reviewed her notes, her mind replaying the courtroom clash, Brennan's snarl, her badge's reveal, the veteran's salutes. She visited her mother, a retired nurse who hugged her tightly. "You're rewriting the rules," her mother said, her eyes wet. Aisha nodded, her badge heavy in her pocket, her resolve a fire that no threat could extinguish. Outside, the park rally swelled, a choir singing under the stars, their voices a shield against the counter-protesters' jeers. Aisha stepped to her window, watching the city's divided heart, knowing the hearing would be a crucible. Her leadership tested in the glare of a nation's eyes. The Richmond City Hall chamber, its high ceilings and oak paneling, a stark contrast to the raw tension filling the space, was a crucible of reckoning as the public hearing on Officer Mark Brennan's actions drew a crowd that spilled into the hallways. Their murmurs a low thunder under the glare of news cameras. Aisha Coleman, the 25-year-old black police chief whose courtroom clash had ignited a national firestorm, stood at the podium, her badge gleaming on her jacket, her eyes steady despite the weight of a city's divided gaze. The hearing, convened to review the investigation into Brennan's assault on her and his history of excessive force, was a make-or-break moment, and Aisha knew every word, every gesture, would be dissected by supporters and critics alike. The panel, led by Judge Harold Grayson and joined by city council members, sat stone-faced, their notes spread before them, while Brennan, suspended and seated at a table with his union lawyer, glared at Aisha, his jaw tight, his defiance barely masked. Aisha opened with a statement, her voice clear and unyielding, slicing through the room's hum. "I stand here not as a victim, but as a chief committed to justice," she said. Her words broadcast live to millions. Officer Brennan's actions, his assault on me, his falsified reports, his pattern of abuse dishonor the badge we wear. She presented the evidence with surgical precision, the courtroom footage of Brennan's attack, the bodega owner's testimony, the nurse's medical report confirming the drug bust suspect's wrist injury, and a 2018 complaint of Brennan intimidating a black teenager, buried by a complicit supervisor. The gallery, packed with activists, veterans, and community leaders like Jamal Carter and Reverend Thomas Hayes, leaned forward, their silence a testament to the evidence's weight. Brennan's lawyer, a slick union rep named Victor Klein, rose to counter, his voice smooth but edged with condescension. "Chief Coleman's allegations are overblown," he said, gesturing to Brennan. "This is a decorated officer, targeted by a new chief eager to make a name." The gallery bristled, a few shouts of liar prompting Grayson's gavel to crack. Aisha didn't flinch, her gaze locking onto Klein's, her response a blade. "If exposing abuse is making a name, then I'll make it every day," she said, drawing gasps and applause. She introduced Detective Carla Reyes, who testified about Brennan's 6 excessive force complaints, 3 targeting black suspects, all dismissed despite clear patterns. Reyes played the drug bust body cam footage, the suspect's pained cry audible as Brennan tightened the cuffs, the room's air growing heavy with outrage. The panel's questions were sharp. Councilwoman Maria Lopez pressed Klein on the buried complaints, while Grayson grilled Brennan directly, his voice stern. "Did you omit the suspect's injury in your report?" he asked. Brennan stammered, his eyes darting, his answer a vague dodge that only deepened the room's skepticism. Aisha seized the moment, sharing her vision for reform mandatory body cam reviews, anti-bias training, and a civilian oversight board. "We can't change the past, but we can build a future where every citizen feels safe," she said, her voice rising, her words sparking cheers that echoed beyond the chamber. The hearing took a pivotal turn when Jamal Carter, invited as a community witness, spoke, his voice raw. "I've seen cops like Brennan my whole life," he said. "Chief Coleman's giving us hope, but only if you back her." His words, live-streamed by thousands, shifted the panel's mood, Lopez nodding visibly. Klein tried to pivot, accusing Aisha of politicizing the badge, but his argument crumbled when Reverend Hayes testified, his voice a quiet fire. "This isn't politics, it's morality," he said, citing Aisha's outreach to the community. The gallery erupted, forcing Grayson to call for order. Aisha's closing was a clarion call, her eyes sweeping the room. "I took an oath to serve, not to silence." She said, "Hold Brennan accountable, and let's rebuild trust together." The panel adjourned to deliberate, But not before Grayson announced Brennan's suspension would continue, with criminal charges pending. The gallery roared, activists embracing, veterans saluting, while Brennan's face darkened, his lawyer whispering furiously. Outside, the crowd, now thousands, cheered as Aisha emerged, Jamal and Hayes flanking her, their signs reading "Aisha leads." News vans captured the scene, with CNN calling her speech a defining moment for reform. But the victory was bittersweet. Anonymous threats had spiked. One scrawled note left on her car: "You'll pay." "Chief," Aisha handed it to Lena Morris, her voice calm. "They're loud because they're losing," she said, her badge a shield against fear. The hearing's impact rippled. The mayor pledged support for Aisha's reforms, while the Latino youth group expanded their mural, adding Aisha's silhouette. Aisha visited the site, touching the paint, her heart swelling at the community's faith. Back at headquarters, she met with Carla, who warned of growing unrest in the precinct. Some officers loyal to Brennan spreading dissent. Aisha nodded, her mind already mapping next steps: a department-wide address to rally the rank and file. She called her mother, whose voice steadied her. "You're shaking the roots," her mother said. "Keep going." As night fell, Aisha stood at her office window, watching the city's lights. The hearing's triumph a spark in a powder keg, her leadership now a beacon for a nation watching her every move. Richmond's pulse beat unevenly, its streets a tapestry of hope and hostility as Aisha Coleman, the 25-year-old black police chief, stepped into her role with a mandate forged in the fire of a public hearing that had exposed Officer Mark Brennan's crimes and rallied a city's conscience. The hearing's verdict: Brennan's continued suspension and looming criminal charges, had cemented Aisha's authority. But it also lit a fuse, the city's divisions flaring like dry tinder under her every move. Aisha stood in the precinct's briefing room, facing a sea of officers, her badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights, her voice steady as she addressed the rank and file for the first time as chief. "We're here to protect, not to harm," she said, her words a challenge and a promise. "I'm starting body cam audits and anti-bias training, effective immediately. Stand with me or step out." Some officers nodded, their eyes wary but open. Others, a tight-knit clique loyal to Brennan, crossed their arms, their glares a silent rebellion. Aisha felt the resistance like a cold wind, but her resolve was iron, her path set by the oath she'd sworn. Outside, the city simmered. Jamal Carter's rallies grew, drawing thousands to a downtown square. Their signs, #Aisha leads, held high as Black, Latino, and white activists chanted for reform. Reverend Thomas Hayes led prayers, his voice a beacon, while the Latino youth group's mural of Aisha's badge became a national symbol, shared across social media with #ReformWithAisha. But the backlash was ferocious. A conservative radio host, Mike Vance, doubled down, calling Aisha a tyrant and a badge, his words fueling protests outside police headquarters, where thin blue line flags waved and shouts of cops, not chiefs, echoed. The tension spilled into violence when a brick shattered a precinct window, the act claimed by an anonymous group decrying Aisha's war on police. Aisha's inbox overflowed with threats, emails with racial slurs, a voicemail promising payback, and Captain Lena Morris, her deputy, insisted on a security detail. "You're a target now," Lena said, her voice tight. Aisha nodded but refused to cower, her badge a shield, her mission clearer than ever. At headquarters, the investigation into Brennan deepened, with Detective Carla Reyes uncovering a network of officers who'd enabled his abuses, including a sergeant who'd buried a 2017 complaint against him. Aisha met with the city attorney, Paul Whitaker, to expand the probe, her voice firm. "We're cleaning house," she said, pushing for disciplinary hearings for Brennan's allies. Whitaker hesitated, citing union pushback, but Aisha's stare was unrelenting. "Do it, or I'll go public," she said, her authority unshakable. The move sparked whispers in the precinct, some officers dubbing her the Iron Chief, a mix of fear and respect in their tones. Aisha built alliances to counter the resistance, meeting with Jamal and Hayes to launch a community policing initiative, pairing officers with local leaders to rebuild trust. She recruited a young black officer, Lieutenant Marcus Tate, whose de-escalation skills mirrored her own, to lead the program. "We're rewriting the playbook," she told him, her eyes alight with possibility. The initiative drew praise, with CNN airing a segment on Aisha's reforms, but it also provoked a darker response. Late one night, Aisha's security detail reported a suspicious car circling her home, its plates untraceable. Lena traced the threats to a burner phone, hinting at an organized effort within the department. Aisha's mother, a retired nurse, called, her voice trembling, but fierce. "You're scaring the devils." "Baby," she said, "don't stop." Aisha clung to the words, her resolve afire against the growing shadows. The tension peaked when Aisha uncovered a chilling lead. A group chat among Brennan's allies, leaked by a whistleblower's officer, contained coded messages about taking back the department, with one post mentioning Aisha's patrol routes. She met with Lena and Marcus in a secure room, her voice low but urgent. "This isn't just talk," she said, ordering surveillance on the group. The whistleblower, a rookie named Sarah Nguyen, risked her career to share the chat, her hands shaking as she met Aisha. "I believe in what you're doing," Sarah said, her voice soft but firm. Aisha clasped her shoulder, a rare gesture, her gratitude unspoken but profound. Outside, the community's support was a lifeline. The Fund for Police Accountability, started by the Latino youth, hit $200,000 funding legal aid for victims of police abuse. A Black-owned bookstore hosted a forum where Aisha spoke, her words raw. "I'm not here to be a symbol," she said. "I'm here to make sure no one else has to fight like I did." The crowd stood, their applause a shield against the threats. But the precinct's unrest grew. With graffiti "Chief" outscrawled on a locker room wall, Aisha walked past it, her head high, her badge a silent answer. She prepared for a city council meeting to defend her reforms, knowing the leaked chat was a ticking bomb, its implications threatening to unravel her leadership or solidify it. As dawn broke, Aisha stood at her office window, the city's skyline a jagged line of hope and strife. Her mother's words echoing. The tensions were rising, but so was her fight, a chief unbowed in a city poised for transformation or collapse. Aisha Coleman, the 25-year-old black police chief whose badge had become a symbol of defiance, stood in her office, her heart pounding as she faced a conspiracy threatening to unravel her leadership. The leaked group chat among Officer Mark Brennan's allies, exposed by a whistleblower, revealed a sinister plot-coded messages about taking back the department, references to Aisha's patrol routes, and plans for chaos to force her resignation. Her badge felt heavier than ever, but her resolve was unbreakable. Her eyes scanning surveillance reports as Captain Lena Morris and Lieutenant Marcus Tate stood by, their faces etched with determination. "This is bigger than Brennan," Aisha said, her voice low and fierce, pointing to a chat log naming Precinct Captain John Hargrove as the ringleader. Lena's tablet displayed damning evidence Hargrove's history of protecting Brennan, paired with phone records tying him to the anonymous threats flooding Aisha's inbox. Racial slurs, vows of payback. The conspiracy wasn't just personal, it was a calculated strike against her reforms. Aisha ordered a sting operation, her tone sharp. "We take them down quietly, and we take them all." The precinct hummed with a deceptive calm, officers unaware that internal affairs, led by Detective Carla Reyes, was tightening the net. Aisha met Reyes in a secure basement office, the air thick with urgency. Reyes had intercepted a call from Hargrove's burner phone, discussing a disruptive incident at Aisha's upcoming city council speech to paint her as incompetent. "They want a riot to make you look weak," Reyes said, her eyes blazing. Aisha's jaw clenched, But a spark of strategy ignited. She'd flip their trap into her victory. She tasked Marcus with embedding plainclothes officers at the council event and Lena with coordinating with an FBI contact to track Hargrove's crew. The stakes were dizzying, but Aisha's focus was laser sharp. Her years of outmaneuvering skeptics in the academy fueling her now. The department's undercurrents grew volatile, with some officers whispering dissent, others watching Aisha with cautious respect. Outside, Jamal Carter's rallies drew thousands. Their signs, hacked Aisha leads held high as Black, Latino, and white activists demanded reform. Reverend Thomas Hayes' prayer vigils, packed with diverse faces, offered hymns that steadied Aisha's heart, while the Latino youth group's mural of her badge became a viral icon, shared with hashtag Reform with Aisha. But the backlash was vicious. Radio host Mike Vance raged, calling Aisha a badge-wielding dictator, his words stoking protests outside headquarters, where thin blue line supporters waved flags and shouted cops, not chiefs. A Molotov cocktail narrowly missed a police line, claimed by an anonymous group blaming Aisha's war on police. Her inbox brimmed with hate emails, voicemails, a scrawled note on her car, quit or else. Lena pushed for more security, but Aisha stood firm. Her badge, her armor. They're loud because they're scared, she said, her voice calm but ironclad. The sting operation struck with precision. Hours before the council speech, Carla's team arrested Hargrove and 3 accomplices at a bar, seizing burner phones and planned for a staged riot. Aisha watched the takedown on a secure feed, her breath steady as Hargrove's defiance collapsed in cuffs. The arrests, kept under wraps, yielded a goldmine text linking the group to precinct graffiti chief out and Aisha's threats, plus a ledger of buried complaints stretching back years. Aisha met the city attorney, Paul Whitaker, to file charges, conspiracy, obstruction, witness intimidation. This ends the old ways, she told him, her voice a blade. Whitaker, once hesitant, agreed, struck by her unyielding drive. Aisha took the fight public, holding a press conference with Lena and Marcus, her badge shining under camera lights. A faction of officers conspired to sabotage this department. She said, her words live-streamed to millions. They're arrested, and we're purging corruption at every level. She announced a reform package, a whistleblower hotline, ethics training, and a task force to reopen old complaints. The speech, aired on CNN, sparked cheers from Jamal's rally, but ignited fury in precinct locker rooms, some officers muttering betrayal. The turning point came when Sarah Nguyen, the whistleblower rookie, spoke publicly, her voice trembling but resolute. I joined to serve, not to hide crimes, she said beside Aisha. The moment shared across social media, fueling hashtag Stand With Sarah alongside hashtag Aisha Leads. The community's response was electric. Donations to the Police Accountability Fund hit $350,000, and a Black-owned diner sent Aisha a pie labeled Iron Chief, a nod to her growing legend. The arrest shook the department, with 2 of Hargrove's allies resigning and a no-confidence petition fizzling as moderates backed Aisha. She met with Jamal and Hayes, their alliance a bedrock, and launched a youth mentorship program. Marcus leading its first class. Threats persisted. A slashed tire, a brick through her office window, but Aisha walked past the debris, her head high. She prepared for the council speech, a chance to solidify her vision. Her mother's voice a beacon. You're their nightmare. Shine. The conspiracy was crumbling, but the fight burned on. Aisha's badge avowed a lead through the fire, her truth reshaping a department and a nation watching her every step. Aisha Coleman stood before the city council chamber, her badge gleaming under the spotlight, her voice steady as she delivered a speech that would etch her name into history. Not just as Richmond's youngest police chief, but as a beacon of resilience against a tide of hate and conspiracy. The arrests of Captain John Hargrove and his accomplices had shattered the plot to sabotage her. Their confessions extracted under FBI pressure laying bare a network of corruption that had festered for years, shielding officers like Mark Brennan while burying complaints from marginalized communities. Aisha's reforms, once a spark, were now ablaze, and the council chamber, packed with supporters like Jamal Carter, Reverend Thomas Hayes, and the Latino youth group, hung on her every word. "We're building a department that serves every citizen," she said, her voice a blend of steel and hope, outlining a sweeping overhaul, mandatory anti-bias training, a civilian oversight board, and a digital dashboard for transparent complaint tracking. The council, swayed by the public's roar and the evidence against Hargrove's crew, voted unanimously to fund her initiatives, a victory that sent cheers rippling through the crowd outside. Their signs had Aisha leads held high. Aisha's journey from courtroom assault to transformative leader had galvanized a movement, but she remained grounded. Her badge a reminder of the oath she'd sworn at 18, driven by her father's humiliation at the hands of a racist cop. The department, though still fractured, began to shift dozens of officers enrolled in her training programs, led by Lieutenant Marcus Tate, while others, loyal to the old guard, resigned. Their exits a quiet win. Captain Lena Morris, her steadfast deputy, oversaw the task force reviewing coal complaints, uncovering cases that led to new investigations and restitutions. Sarah Nguyen, the whistleblower rookie, became a trainer for the youth mentorship program, her courage inspiring recruits to embrace Aisha's vision. The community's embrace was profound. Donations to the Police Accountability Fund soared past $500,000 funding legal aid and community policing projects, while a Black-owned bakery gifted Aisha a plaque reading Iron Chief, a title now whispered with reverence. Aisha visited the mural of her badge, now a national landmark, and met with its young artists, their pride fueling her. "You're our future," she told them, her voice soft but firm, a promise to mentor the next generation. The threats, though diminished, lingered, a slashed tire here, a hateful email there, but Aisha faced them with the same calm she'd shown in court. Her security detail a necessity she accepted without fear. Her mother, a retired nurse, hosted a family dinner, her words a balm. "You've changed the world, baby." Aisha smiled, her heart full, knowing the work was far from done. Nationally, her story sparked change. A senator's bill, inspired by her reforms, passed, mandating federal oversight of police misconduct, while cities from Atlanta to Seattle adopted her transparency model. CNN aired a documentary, Unbowed: The Rise of Aisha Coleman, tracing her path from Academy standout to chief, with Jamal and Hayes praising her as a moral force. Aisha watched the premiere with Lena, her laughter rare but genuine when Sarah appeared, calling her the boss who never blinks. The department's culture shifted palpably. Officers like Marcus led community walk-alongs, reducing arrests through dialogue, while the whistleblower hotline buzzed with tips, each one a step toward accountability. Aisha's reforms drew global attention, with a UN panel inviting her to speak on policing equity. Her badge a symbol on the world stage. Back home, she launched a mental health program for officers, recognizing the toll of their work, a move that won over skeptics in the precinct. The old guard's influence waned, their no-confidence petitions forgotten, replaced by a cautious unity under Aisha's lead. A year after the courtroom clash, a ceremony unveiled a plaque outside headquarters, inscribed for Aisha Coleman, Chief of Resilience, who led through truth. Aisha spoke briefly, her voice steady. "This isn't my victory, it's ours. For every voice that wasn't heard," she said, gesturing to the crowd, Jamal, Hayes, Sarah, Marcus, Lena, and thousands more. The applause was deafening. Veterans saluting, youth chanting her name, their faith a shield against the battles past. Aisha stepped down, her badge catching the light, and returned to her office, where a letter from her father, written before his passing, waited on her desk. "Be the change they can't ignore." She touched it, her eyes wet but her heart resolute, a chief who turned pain into power. The fight for justice continued, but Aisha Coleman, unbowed, had become a symbol of what courage could achieve. Her legacy a blueprint for a nation ready to heal. From a courtroom assault to a chief's rise, Aisha Coleman's story shattered prejudice and sparked reform. Thank you for watching, like, share, and subscribe to never miss a story. Hit the bell for our latest videos and join us in celebrating resilience and justice.